Lavash, you're all set with your mortgage, and I assume you understand what you just signed.
The stack of papers, George?
That's right. And for future, just call this number if you need anything. And, ooh, yeah, I'm gonna need that pen back.
The mortgage process can be confusing. Looking for the right rate, the right term, and most importantly, the right place to get your mortgage. At Clinton Savings Bank, we are committed to getting the mortgage that's right for you. You may even receive up to a $750 credit off your closing costs. Plus, right now, you can lock in the rate from your pre-qualification for 90 days while you look for a home. So what are you waiting for? Definitely not this.
Oh, boy. Hi, Mrs. Lavash. How can I help? You're breaking up. Try again later.
Subject to credit approval. Offer may be withdrawn at any time. For complete details, exclusions, and credit cost and terms, call 888-744-4272. Apply at ClintonSavings.com. NMLS number 422081. Member FDIC. Member DIF. Equal housing lender.
We know why you're awake. Your child is about to get their driver's license. Levante's Auto School offers 1-week driving programs to help make sure your child stays safe and focused behind the wheel.
877 Drive Ed. Who's Ed?
That's the number for Levante's Auto School.
Learn to drive safely and efficiently. Visit one of our 5 locations throughout Massachusetts. Click Levante'sAutoSchool.com.
Levante's Auto School shows you how to learn the rules and keep your cool. 877 Drive Ed.
Who's Ed? That's the number for Levante's Auto School.
Hi, this is Brian Carpenter from One Worcester Homes. We're excited to offer the strongest buyer and seller representation throughout Worcester County and all the surrounding areas. Our agents are trained better and will look out for your best interest throughout the entire transaction. To reach out to One Worcester Homes, simply find us on Facebook, type in One Worcester Homes. We look forward to the opportunity to help you and your family in your home buying or selling transaction. And don't forget to join us the 4th Saturday of every month at 7:30 on Handling Change.
The following is a paid program. The opinions are those of the host and guests, and not necessarily those of the station or its management.
This is the Joe Mangicotti Show. Our topics are large and small. When you really need to know, we are the show.
All right, folks, good morning, and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangicotti Show. I am Joe Mangicotti. All right, lines open and available, 508-871-7000 to reach into the studio for two-way talk and conversation as we broadcast from our palatial but not overly ostentatious studios here in Westborough, Massachusetts. You can also text us on our text line, which is real easy, 617-297-8388, just like you were going to text your buddy to remind him to meet you for a drink while you watch the game, 617-297-8388. If you don't want to text, but you have a device or you can't text, if you just email textjoeontheradio at gmail.com, it's the same thing. It appears on the same screen. And I want to thank everybody who uses that. It's been a great addition because amazing how many people shoot off a note or a little something during the show, and I get to see it in real time, so I really appreciate that, as well as all the other things that you send in during the week. It really does help. I usually, at least once during the show, let you know that we do have an office number for the show, which is 508-603-9778. Same number that we've had for 14 years now, for conservatively speaking. 508-603-9778. And the email address is joemshow@gmail.com. Good morning, Cam. All right. Sorry, he's on the phone. Didn't mean to do that, but we'll go back and say good morning to Cam in a minute. All right, so we have a lot of stuff to talk about, but good morning, Cam. How are you, sir?
Morning. I'm good.
I didn't notice you were on the phone when I talked to you.
Yeah, we got a caller so far.
Awesome.
Start off early this morning.
Right. We love it. We'll get to that in 1 second. I just want to say that yesterday was a great show. I think we covered a lot of good stuff. And we had a good guest that came in as well, or called in as well. And we covered a lot of ground. Dr. Fetawa joined us. But today in hour 2, I have big announcement that we're going to make in that hour, so stick with us if you can. We're also streaming. I think we are. We had some difficulty yesterday, and I didn't really check it. Yeah, thumbs up. Okay. So we are streaming on the TuneIn app. So if you don't have TuneIn, it literally takes seconds to download it on your phone and punch in WCRN, and you can take us anywhere. And honestly, I get into the truck or the car. It syncs, the phone syncs, and I actually listen to most stations streaming than I do on celestial now, or terrestrial, I should say. 508-871-7000. So big announcement in hour 2, and we'll have an in-studio guest, and we'll also be joined via the phone. The topic for hour 2 today, and I've wanted to do this for a while, and so I did put it together. It's basically religion in America today. So we're going to talk about religion, how it plays in politics. We'll talk about politicians who are very faithful or use their faith when it's convenient, and they don't when it isn't. And how does that play a role? And by happenstance, and this was all in the works before this past week, but Mitt Romney kind of really used his religion as a crutch and to justify his voting. So that's an interesting move, because he wasn't big on the religion, or he's big on religion, I shouldn't say that. He's big on religion, but he wasn't big on putting it out there when he ran for governor, when he ran for Senate, even when he ran for president, because I don't think a lot of people understand Mormons anyway, so they're not quite sure about the religion. They don't understand it. It's not something, and at least my observation is, unless you happen to know a Mormon and they tell you some things and you ask questions, I think the people who don't have that privilege of knowing or having a friend as a Mormon don't quite understand the religion. So he used it kind of a crutch to justify his vote. And I remember, this is the same guy that said, I'm going to vote for witnesses because there isn't enough information here to make a decision. And when there were no witnesses, he said, well, I've got to vote guilty. Well, Mitt, I think that you should just be honest that you don't like the president. You liked him when he gave you money, and you wanted to have him endorse you for this race and in 2012, and you liked him when it was good for you, and you don't like him now. And if he didn't have enough evidence and the story wasn't clear and you needed witnesses, all of a sudden you have enough evidence to vote guilty. And let's not forget, because it seems like when it comes to President Trump, the entire concept of innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt isn't applicable to this man. But he had a great week overall. Bannon, he was on Bill Maher this week, which was great, because I think he kind of put that smug Maher in his place a little bit. One point, he's trying to verbally spar with Bannon, and Bannon, he came on prepared, okay? Bannon was great. I'm saying Bill Maher came on prepared. And even at one point he says, well, all right, the rules, tell me the rules. And Bannon's like, the rules. The problem is you can't, meaning the Democratic Party can't win by the rules. That's why you're constantly changing them, all the way to the Rule 660 that was put into place just for this impeachment trial in the Intelligence Committee, not the Judiciary Committee. Right? They changed the rules in the Iowa caucus. They changed the rules when it fits them. And that's a whole nother topic that I'm not going to get into right now, but I'm telling you, this whole Bernie Sanders, I really thought that it was just incompetence up until pretty much yesterday about the Iowa caucus. But I think that it's suspicious that Bernie Sanders was looking really good when it came to Iowa caucus and coming out. The Democrats do not want Bernie Sanders as the flag bearer. They don't want him as the candidate. It scares them. They don't want it. And I'm telling the Bernie Sanders supporters, you need to be vocal. And I think they will be. They know that the primary in 2016 was literally stolen away from him. That the election on that, the primary, was fixed for Hillary. They've changed the rules. Remember the superdelegate bait and switch there that they did? So, look, Sanders has a right to be upset. Now, I don't think he'll be ever be elected president. He's trying to change. I mean, and the attention's going to go to Bernie, especially if he pulls out New Hampshire, right? It's really going to go to Bernie, and they're going to look at his overall career, his overall character. A guy, who went to the Soviet Union in the 70s and said it was fantastic, and people standing in bread lines is a good thing, and all of that. And he pointed to Venezuela. He's not anymore. Now he's changed his tune. He's saying, well, I don't mean socialism, like Soviet Union was. I'm talking about Denmark and Sweden. But they're not actually socialist, by the way. Technically, they are a republic with just incredibly high taxes and social programs. But they aren't socialists. They're more fascist, actually. So that is they're just going to turn their attention to Bernie Sanders, and they do not want him going against Trump. Not just on the fact that it would be embarrassing on a debate stage with Donald Trump for him, but on policy and principle. You're going to tell a United States of America, with the economy we have, the unemployment where it is, regulations being streamlined and alleviated, prescription drugs, trade, security, border, and you're going to go to a guy that says, no, I'm going to open the borders, Medicare for all, illegals get everything, it doesn't matter, all of that, no, it's not going to fly. So they don't want to, and I've said this, and I've said this for a while, that the chaos and the confusion and no clear front runner is all lending itself to a brokered convention, so they can go through 2 rounds, maybe 3 rounds, and as James Wood said, drunk airbag is going to come out of the woodwork at that point. So you figure it out. Connect the dots, put it together, add 2 and 2. You see what you get. 508-871-7000. Lee in Waltham, good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning. I was just going to call because I was going to talk about something yesterday, but
yes,
when you were
I remember
talking
that.
about the China person, I can move with that. No, I just wanted to tell you the big deal about this whole Burisma and this this thing with the Trump interfering. He may have interfered in the sense that he let out the news, that it was Barack Obama who had this thing going with this setup bank. I forget the name, what they call the bank, but it was off of Cyprus. They tried to send it through London, but London would report it.
All right, Lee, let me just interject. So what happened is there was $14.5 million that was actually sent to Lafayette, and it was disguised as a loan. Now you can get all this from Rudy Giuliani. He has 3 witnesses who were in the room when the Obama representatives literally said, get dirt on Manafort, did exactly what they accused Trump of doing, get dirt on this guy who's part of this political campaign because we're going after Trump. That money then went back out and eventually returned back. But when it got to the United States, it disappeared. Okay,
right.
So they couldn't track it. $14.5 million, Lafayette. That's how
it was Barack Obama who sent that money. I had
originally.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
I had $7 billion on the proxy war that he was fighting with, and he was supplying it. I guess the Ukraine government with this Kolomansky guy, right? Kolomansky.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when they put the ban on it, but see, my point is this. I go back to, and I said about that we're living in an oligarchy. All these people, they stole this money from the American people, the $7.8 billion. $1.8 million really was taxpayer dollars that they just transferred, didn't account for it, he didn't put it through, he didn't tell anybody, he didn't say anything to anybody, he just sent it over. Now, if that were Trump, you know what would happen. He'd be out of the game for the presidency, you see? But see, what I'm saying is that these people protect each other, and it's a very, very serious thing that we're going through. And I'm not sure that an election is really going to help all this until one thing, and I know I'm a pain in the neck when I say it, people have to go to jail. And they're not very serious about it.
All right, Lee, I agree 100%. Now, the thing about this is I did catch, I think it was on Waters, Waters World, Giuliani on that, and I also watch. If you look at Judge Perot, look, she had Lindsey Graham, there's Rudy Giuliani, and McCarthy. Am I saying is it McCarthy? The minority, is it McCarthy? Yeah, the guy they want to get. McCarthy. They want him to get back in as Speaker when the Republicans take the House over in November. So they're all saying, just wait, because they know what's coming. And I think, I really hope, and I believe that we will see indictments. I know a lot of people are thinking, well, what's get on with it, for crying out loud. What's taking so long? Trust me, with people like Bill Barr, the guy doing it, when they come, the T's will be crossed, the I's will be dotted. And I really do think, and President Trump said it a couple days ago, that his words, man, if I did not fire James Comey, I probably wouldn't be standing here, because once I fired him, it went to heck. It just, people were ratting everybody out, and everybody, trying to save their souls. And I said that's going to happen, because none of these people are stand-up guys like an old school wise guy by any means. So they're going to save themselves. So people will start going, to prison. People are going to start wearing orange jumpsuits. I really think it's going to happen. I think it has to happen to restore the faith in the American justice system, because this has been the most incredible slow-motion coup, the most incredible travesty of justice. And as President Trump has been saying, Lee, it's not about me. It's about the institution, the office of the presidency. This cannot ever happen to any other person, any other president or person running for presidency down the road.
Well, I would hope that you're right, okay? But when it takes too long, it's going to be like yesterday. I listened to a station. I forget, it was on down the dial.
Oh,
and
man,
the first time,
Lee, you cheated on me, man.
You were already over.
All right, cool. That's all right.
I can't hang around all day.
No, you get a hallway pass.
But what gets me was this, and you know me, so you know that I was really excited. There was a person that was on the radio telling us about stuff, and he says, and we finally realized that Lee Harvey Oswald did not kill JFK. And I says, thank you. I've been called a nut for all these years, and he's on there, and they says they've got that information. Now, he was never, those people that were responsible were never prosecuted.
Mm-hmm.
They kept it secret. What's to stop them now? And I know that you're going to have these investigations, but you know what I mean? We're going to have to heal the nation.
And I don't want to be cheeky about it, but I think what's not going to let it happen this time is, as long as the blood is pumping through Donald J. Trump's heart, I think it will come out. He is the Beltway's worst nightmare. He is the establishment's worst nightmare.
Okay. All right, I'll take that, because it's early Sunday and I'm on my way to church. But I'm just saying to you that that it's got to happen, and it's got to happen soon.
Right.
Because this country, this oligarchy is getting stronger, and we're seeing it in all the cities.
Absolutely.
And the fact that we even have to debate why we have to pay for illegal aliens out of our money while we're paying our own way through, and they think nothing of it.
Lee, you're 100%, man.
Serious.
You're 100%. Have fun at church, and I hope that you have the ability to listen in the 7 o'clock hour. I think it's going to be a great segment in that hour. We're going to have Reverend Peter Preble in, John Fie, who is from the Messiah College, history professor. We're going to do, the topic is going to be religion in America, and we got a big announcement to make in an hour or two. So hopefully you can listen.
Good.
All right, thank you very much, Lee. Always a pleasure, and again, thanks for the call. It's always appreciated. 508-871-7000 on this early Sunday morning. Good morning, Mark. How are you, sir?
Good morning, sir. Well, I'll say it again. Thank you for keeping the voice of conservatism alive in the state of Massachusetts because we're in if you're a Republican, we're all in ICU in this state. And I want to point out about this TCI. Okay?
Oh, yes.
Transportation Climate Initiative.
You spelt that wrong, Mark. Mark, it's spelled TAX.
Yeah. Let's get back to the state of Massachusetts and what's going on in the state of Massachusetts while people are sleeping.
Yeah.
They want to pass this TCI. Make no mistake about it. It's a money grab and it's a tax. And one of our I don't want to get too highfalutin here, but probably one of our founding fathers said taxation without representation is tyranny.
Yep. 100%.
And and like that woman that calls in, she got a paper delivery service, and she calls in and says it's just going to put me out of business. Pure and simple. If it goes up to 20, it goes up 20 cents. They're talking it could go up in increments, incrementally, automatically. You're going to be paying what you're paying in Los Angeles County for gasoline, which is I think is about $5 a gallon.
Yep.
So the people in this state better wake up and start calling their representatives and complain about this TCI. And the second idiotic thing that the State House is doing is they want to give
licenses
to illegal alien foreign nationals. If that isn't nuts, I don't know. But Charlie Baker comes out and says, I think I'm going to veto it. Good if he vetoes it. Big deal. You got a super majority in the State House of Democrats in the House, in the Senate. They got enough votes to just override his majority, so he's off the hook, and we're on the hook. Have a good one. All right.
Mark, all right, thank you. I was going to say to you, Mark, I swear that you could write my show notes because right here in front of me I have TCI, TAX to talk about it. I have the driver's license for illegal aliens. Massachusetts Legislative Committee says in front of me, you nailed it. I wanted to. And I said when we went to Sundays that I wanted to spend Sundays talking more about the state level stuff opposed to the national and international stuff. But the TCI, thank goodness that it had got traction, and then it's been slipping because we don't have the area governors all signing in on this. You got Baker. I am so disappointed with that man. He's just talk about your rhino, and we're going to be talking with Mass Fiscal Alliance. More on a regular basis, at least every week now. We would have them on once in a while, but the guys over there at Mass Fiscal Alliance, they're on top of this TCI situation. And also, yes, matter of fact, Mark, if you go look at the show teaser on the Facebook page, I talk about these things that we're going to talk about today. I swear we're on the same page most of the time. Licenses. What I find interesting, folks, is we see the key legislative committee, Massachusetts legislature is recommending a bill that would allow illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses. Okay? And they're saying that it's safety reasons, right? The Joint Committee on Transportation of the Mass Legislature voted Wednesday on the 5th to recommend a redrafted version of the measure. It's Senate Bill 2061. A sponsor of the bill is State Representative Christine Barber. She's a Democrat from Somerville. You really need to say Democrat, though, right? Current state law does not allow foreign nationals in the country illegally to get driver's licenses. No license of any type may be issued to any person who does not have lawful presence in the United States. That is the state's statute. The bill would strike the language and replace it with persons who are unable to provide proof of lawful presence or who are ineligible for a Social Security number. There's only one reason you're not eligible. May apply for a Massachusetts license if they meet all other qualifications for licensure and provide satisfactory proof to the registrar of identity, date of birth, and Massachusetts residency. Supporters say illegal immigrants need to drive to work in other places, and they deserve to do so lawfully. Listen to that sentence. Supporters say illegal immigrants need to drive to work. That's just about as good as illegals aren't illegal in Massachusetts. An illegal needs a license to drive to work. They're not supposed to be able to legally work in the country. Am I in bizarro land? When did I go through the wormhole? It's like they say this stuff and nobody goes, oh, what? Nobody calls them. Nobody in the media questions what they mean by this. We already know that there are members of the legislature that pretend that they don't know that there's abuse with food stamps and that illegals are driving and getting jobs and housing and benefits. We already know all that. But their argument is literally supporters say illegal immigrants need to drive to work and other places, and they deserve to do so lawfully. No, they don't. By virtue of being an illegal alien, they have no right to anything. Meaning they don't, I don't mean they don't have a right to dignity. No. They legally are not supposed to be working. They certainly shouldn't be driving or receiving any other. They're not supposed to be here. They shouldn't be counted in the census. They should not be allowed to vote. It's just beyond bizarre. So we have, and I got a break here in a second, so let me say real quick. So at the same time that we have the legislature saying that we're going to give a license to illegal aliens, Bill Gavin, who's a nice guy, right, been there forever, and Secretary of State's running commercials saying, hey, you should vote, register to vote. It only takes 5 minutes. If you have a phone, you can go on. So if you have a license and a phone, you can register to vote. So we give the license. They go online, take their smartphone, which, big obstacle because nobody has a smartphone, and they can register to vote. Do you see the ludicrous situation that we got here? Unbelievable. All right, 30 minutes after the hour, we get to take a break here. We're going to check in with Handling Change of Paul Stankus from the Cantiani Insurance Group. We're going to talk a little bit about the umbrella policy, and we'll be back on the other side. I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
This is Sean Burke, president of the Licensed Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts, asking you to visit us at lpdam.org when you think you need a private investigator. Don't let your emotions negatively affect your future. Get your answers through a Massachusetts licensed private investigator. Get the facts without risking your credibility by unknowingly committing a criminal offense. You need a license to perform investigations in Massachusetts. What are some types of work that requires a license? Any type of surveillance, interviewing someone for a third party, background and asset checks are just a few examples. For more on this, visit us at lpdm.org and tune in to AM 830 WCRN Sunday mornings at 7:30 for case files from the LPDM or anytime at lpdmcasefiles.com.
Good morning and welcome to Handling Change from the Cantiani Insurance Studios. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and Paul Stankus of the Cantiani Agency joins us this week. Protecting your home, auto, business, and possessions can be challenging. Paul can help you handle those challenges. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show again. 2020, here we are. How are things at Cantiani Agency?
Everything is going great.
Fantastic. Let's jump right into this. I was thinking, because, you watch a lot of commercials out there, right? It's almost become more about the characters in these insurance commercials than the insurance coverage. And we've heard a lot of terms like bundling, and I think people get the whole concept of that, and we understand that. But there is something out there I hear once in a while, and it's called the umbrella coverage or the umbrella policy. And I'm not sure everybody gets that. Do you think you could explain that for us?
Sure. An umbrella policy is a policy that provides additional liability coverage over and beyond what's on the underlying home or auto policy.
Oh, fantastic. So this is above and beyond your policy that you already have on everything.
gives you additional protection if someone is trying to come after your assets.
So this would be placed on there because it's a way of upping your coverage, or is there another benefit to it?
The policy itself basically does just give additional liability coverage. Your auto or home policy per se will only give you a certain level of coverage. The umbrella policy, something you can purchase to provide additional coverage to make sure that you're covered appropriately based on what you have for assets.
Well, it sounds like it's something you should have, and it's a benefit to have. So let me ask you first, why don't most people have one then?
Well, in the insurance world, most people won't purchase something if they're not fully informed about it, and a lot of people don't know exactly what an umbrella policy can provide for them.
So it's a classic you can't ask for, which you don't know exists.
Correct.
And then, of course, if you don't know the benefits and the reasons for it, you wouldn't know to ask for it. Let me ask you this then. The cost involved, is it going to be a substantial increase to your premium if you have an umbrella policy?
Umbrella policies are fairly inexpensive. For the coverage that you're obtaining, the cost is usually pennies on the dollar. Umbrella policies usually start with $1 million liability limits, but we have some carriers that will go up to $10 million umbrella policies.
How many items do you need to have, or how many policies do you need in place that it would actually work, that you can get one of these umbrella policies?
As a standard, most of our companies require that they write your underlying home and auto policy as far as a personal umbrella. We do have a company that does offer umbrella coverage if you just have an auto, but for the most part, they're looking for you to have a home as well as auto. But the umbrella will cover rental properties as well as boats, motorcycles, and any other toys that you might have.
Well, this is all fantastic. It sounds like you get a lot of benefit and protection with an umbrella policy.
The umbrella policy itself is going to provide the additional coverage, but it's also going to provide you representation in the event that you're being sued and someone's trying to come after all of your assets.
That's a scary situation to be in. So are you suggesting that everybody that has your standard policies, home, even rental, auto, or commercial policy should inquire about this if they've never had this conversation?
I think it's something to definitely consider and ask about. An umbrella policy, like I said, doesn't cost much, and you may not need it, but you may feel more comfortable having it. And also, if you have more than just a home and auto, once you have a few rental properties, in the event you're being sued, someone can come after just about anything. So you want to make sure that you have an umbrella to go over all that and give you the proper protection.
And you mentioned the sue part a couple of times, so I guess that's really one of the huge benefits of an insurance, or rather an umbrella policy, is you just have that much more against litigious society that we're in.
That's correct.
All right, fantastic. So, of course, people can reach you and any of the good folks down at Candiani Insurance any business day. All right, Paul, well, thank you for stopping in. Fantastic information. And again, anybody can give you guys a call down at the agency anytime, right?
Absolutely.
All right. And thank you for joining us for Handling Change from the Candiani Insurance Studios. Join us each week at 7:30 as we give you the tools to handle the changes in your life, and visit us at handlingchange.info. You can find Candiani Insurance online at candianiagency.com or call 508-791-2088. For Paul, I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to Joe.
All right, folks, welcome back to second half of the first hour on the Sunday edition of TJM. I am Joe Mangiacotti, 508-871-7000 to reach into the studio as we broadcast from our palatial but not overly ostentatious studios here in Westboro, Massachusetts. We also have a text line, 617-297-8388, and you can do that as you would text anybody, or you can email textjoeintheradio@gmail.com. And we're streaming on the TuneIn app at WCRN. All right, folks, in hour two, we've got a big announcement to make, and the topic of that hour is going to actually be religion in America, and how does it play a role in politics. But let's go to the phones. Good morning, Ken. You've been waiting. Lieutenant, how are you, sir?
Lieutenant Ken reporting that the NSC member sharing our title has been swept out of the White House.
You were cut off in the beginning. I'm sorry. Say that again. White House. I heard White House.
That the NSC member sharing our title has been swept out of the House.
The Vindman brothers escorted.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah, both of them. Well, and he recalled the ambassador. Of course, look at You know, it's funny how everything that is the norm and everything that is totally acceptable when it comes to Trump is exactly opposite, not acceptable. When I see posts on there and people said, look, you got to remember that all of these people, everybody that comes under the big umbrella of the executive branch, they do serve at the pleasure of the president, regardless of who the president is. That's the way it works. But when it's Trump, it's how dare he? Well, no. Ambassadors are changed with administration. An ambassador is just that. They are representing the United States of America and our foreign policy in foreign lands. That's exactly their job, is to take the current administration's foreign policy and go out. Go forth, my ambassadors, and spread thy word. That's their job. And if you are not on board with this administration's foreign policy, then we'll put somebody in there who is. And if Vindman, and it looks like it may be the situation, leaked and shared information from a presidential call, I think he needs to answer for that.
Yeah, to Eric Taramella. We know that happened.
Yeah, now we're saying, and Rudy Giuliani was saying, I think it might have even been yesterday, that going way back to 2016, that Caramella may have actually been present in the room when everything from Manafort, getting dirt on Manafort forward, was discussed.
That was January 2016 with the president and the vice president.
Yeah. So look at this is, and I'm coming back to what Lee was saying, and Mark, who calls, has said it, because I know Mark's not happy with A.G. Barr's timeline, and I'm maintaining, folks, that just because we're not seeing a lot going on, and I really hope, I can't tell you how much faith I'm putting in these guys, that it is happening. And I take it as a good signal when Lindsey Graham and McCarthy and these people are on these talk shows and they say, just wait. Lindsey Graham has already started with looking into Hunter Biden and the situation there. We've got Giuliani as a pit bull. He has said it over and over. He has, and unlike Pencil Neck, when he says he has proof in all this stuff, and he's totally lying, Giuliani isn't. He was a U.S. attorney. He was a prosecutor for decades. When he says he has a smoking gun, he has the affidavits, he has the witnesses, he's traveled around the world. I would like them to give Giuliani about 3 hours in front of Congress with people under oath and lay it all out. I think that would be a good thing for this country.
And you do know the twin brother story, right?
Just that they're twin brothers told me the story.
He's in the NSC also, and what is his role? His role is to review documents.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's the one that reviewed the Bolton book and leaked it.
Yep, exactly. And it's shaping up that the Vindmans are like screen doors. There are a lot of leaks there. They just so you got Colonel Vindman, which, by the way, I don't know if this tickles anybody else and not in a good way. Here's a guy who's not an American-born citizen who actually, during this whole process, is offered what would be the equivalent of a cabinet position in the Ukraine. But that aside, okay, let's put a pin in that for a second. You've got Vindman, the Colonel Vindman, and then you got the brother, and these two guys have somehow worked their way into these incredibly sensitive positions. And they clearly have their own agenda. And if that's not something, that is something I think, Ken, that we saw in the real mock trial, that's what I call it with the House, is that the rank and file, the career bureaucrats in the State Department really think that they run things. And I guess they do. But they were so offended that the president had the gall to set the agenda. and that he expected them to follow his foreign policy, which he got elected on by the people. And because it's not done that way, he needs to go. And they're offended that he didn't check with them and that he didn't let them do whatever it is they wanted to do. It is their job to carry the president's foreign policy out. And I got a simple bit of advice for you. If you don't like the president's policy, foreign policy, quit or put in for transfer. It's not your job. Either do it and keep your personal opinion out of it, or get the heck out of the position.
You know, whether it be Lee or Mark or others who are concerned about all the corruption that exists in Washington, D.C., and with these stories and things happening nationally, it's fair to say that now at least we have the pit bull in the White House for the next 5 years to oversee and clean up a lot of this mess, and then you have to worry, what about after he's gone? And it is fair to say that there won't be somebody of his stature to do all the things he's been doing. But that doesn't mean the Trump effect goes away. You know why? What do you think his impact is going to be post his service as president?
Well, I've said this before, folks, and if you haven't heard it or don't realize, one of, I think, his biggest legacies is going to be the courts. He has 2 Supreme Court appointments. I think that you'll see 3 and maybe 4 before he's out of the White House. Plus, last count I heard, it was 187 federal judges have been appointed, which means that he has brought a little more equity to the federal court system. So that's going to last for years. That's going to be a long-lasting, effect that he's been able to bring. He has put justices in place who are actually not activist judges, who are going to manipulate decisions in the law, including the Constitution, to get to the policies they want.
That's absolutely right up there in the top 2. I'll throw up another one, though, is who controls the media? Whose voice that people listen to get the news?
Well, I think Trump has pulled the curtain back on the media a little bit, Ken.
Well, yeah, but my point is he will have his own enterprise.
He said that. He said that, and I wouldn't be surprised that once he leaves the White House that you don't see a Trump News Network.
And who do you think will be the CEO of Trump News Network?
Oh, it will either be Eric or Don Jr.
It'll be Jr.
Yeah.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
And I think that I think we're seeing maybe Jr. starting to line up for politics. I
think it's more important that he take the Trump News Network or whatever it's meant to be that they.
Well, I mean, don't forget he's got Eric and he's got Ivanka. Right, Ivanka's the daughter, right? So she's very intelligent. And the son-in-law is Kirshner there. I'm telling you, it's a very savvy, intelligent family altogether. So, I think we're going to see another Trump run, but I agree 100% that he can do it. Okay, he can pull the money together, he can pull the talent together, and he can do what Fox was before the old man died, and more. He can do take the original, what was the original Fox, and make it even larger and better. And I think that if we could get back to some unbiased media that actually look at what's going on. I mean, you turn around. There was at the University of Arizona, we had a student there because you had the Turning Point had like a table set up, and I don't know if you're familiar with Turning Point. That's the Kirk's place, Charlie Kirk's thing.
Yep.
So in the chapter, Students for Trump chapter at the University of Arizona had an informational booth up. Well, this student lost their mind the other day, and was screaming about slitting every Republican's throat. Now, a year ago, what was all over the news a year ago? Sandman standing there while that Native American got on his face and pounded the drum, and the media attacked that kid who did nothing whatsoever. He did the incredibly huge crime of wearing a mega hat. That's it. And now you have a student who is actually threatening violence, and the media silent on it. Nothing. So if we could get rid of the CNNs and MSNBCs of the world that just act as really a branch of the DNC, or maybe the DNC is a branch of them. I don't care. It's one way or the other. But the point is, if we could get some real journalists and integrity back in the media, it would be a really good thing for this country.
Joe, a quick anecdote. I'm working yesterday, and near my work, I went for fast food lunch, and I'm about to make my order, and a black man says, he's looking at the place had CNN news showing, and he said, "Oh, I'm not voting for him. I'll vote for Trump instead." He was talking about Biden.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine that happening in the past in your life?
Yeah. Well,
publicly, a black man saying, "I'm voting for Trump."
Yep. Well, I got to tell you, and I think I was saying this yesterday, that this time around, there are a lot less closet supporters for Trump. There's still a lot, but we have so much to hang our hat on for his accomplishments in the economy that more people are out of the closet when it comes to Trump support than they were in 2016. But I got to tell you, you've got, and I just know a lot of people in business, a lot of people in different fields, and most of the professional black men and women that I know are actually Trump supporters. And look, I said this a year ago, I said it in 2016, that if the black voting bloc has been traditionally Democratic for so long, and the Democrats operate under just the assumption that they have the vote, and all it needs to move is just a couple of points, Ken, and it changes everything. And now the Rasmussen poll has come out, and Trump's black voter support has doubled in 1 year. And
over 40%.
It's 42% from 21%. That's incredible. And when you've got, I mean, Biden is done. I don't, put the fork in him, all the cliches you want to say. The money is drying up. You cannot get these huge limousine liberals to continue to invest into Biden when, as his Iowa showing, if he doesn't do anything in New Hampshire, if he's in fourth in New Hampshire.
He's in fifth.
Fifth, look, he just isn't going to pull it out, right? So you've got the Bernie, and then you got the Bernie bros. Look at, they're going to be in the same, what happened in 2016, a lot of the Bernie supporters went over to Trump because they were so pissed at Hillary Clinton, being manipulated in, and that they screwed Bernie. They fixed the primary election, and they seem to be trying to say they don't want him. And so I'm saying to it now, you Bernie bros, you Bernie supporters, don't let them get away with it. Your man should probably be the nominee. And if they do screw you again, Trump is welcoming you with open arms. Because if you're looking for, real justice, that's where you need to go.
Joe, check out the Emerson College polling charts. Just go on their website. It's incredible.
Emerson.
7 days ago, the New Hampshire voters' expectations for the Democratic nominee.
Yeah.
It was Biden 39, Sanders 38. 7 days later, it's Sanders 44, Biden 16.
Wow.
That's an earthquake.
Wow. All right.
That's what explains what's going on in Iowa.
It's great. I will check out the Emerson polling, but I got to run because I got another call, and we're coming to the end of the hour. Lieutenant, thank you very much. Always appreciate the call. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Gene, let's get you in there before we have to wrap up today.
Joe,
Good morning.
Joe, good morning. Happy Sunday. And I heard you, and Ken, great questions, and Lee is on his way to church, and praise Jesus for that, because that's the reason. I never say not to go to a church, Joe. I say go to a church and make sure they're preaching. They're preaching the rest of the gospel. They're saying the rest of the gospel, not preaching tickling of ears, not preaching let you feel religious. Your soul's at stake. And, this is something that we all want, that little buzz. We all want to feel connected. We all want to belong. You have to fight against that when you have to take stands. And it's gotten down to now that, hey, what do I feel? No, what does Jesus say? What does Jesus say we have to do? Mm-hmm. And that's where you become the enemy. And Joe, I want to tell you something. I don't know who this man is. What did you say? He was coming on. Yeah. He's a reverend, but is he politically correct or is he correct? Would you ask him that?
He's going to join us in hour 2, and we're also going to be joined by John Fia. John Fia is a professor of American history at Messiah College and in Pennsylvania. He previously, his books include America Founded as a Christian Nation, my ears, historical introduction, and he blogs regularly. So in hour 2, we'll be talking about religion in America and in American politics. And it's something I've wanted to do for a long time. And, Gene, you stick with us because we've got a really big announcement to make in hour 2 as well.
And Joe, I want to thank you for at least having him on, saying where he's coming from. And then also, are there calls that are going to be coming through? Are there calls that are going to be coming through that I could possibly come through again, where he's going to be on as a birthday gift to me? My birthday's not as an early birthday gift.
Oh, your birthday's
given to me yesterday.
Nice. I won't ask how much, of course. How old, rather. Never ask a lady. Nope, don't say it.
I cannot believe I can closer to heaven. Joe, I'm telling you, it goes so quick. It's so frightening. It's so unbelievable how fast everything's happening now. But, I do tell people, enjoy being young and gorgeous, but number one is get the soul ready, Joe, because the things that are happening now, everything, Joe, it is a division that's happening. I mean, this is the great divide in this world today. The communist, socialist, fascists that want to take over the world, and that's biblical. There's going to be an antichrist. I hope he speaks on that. I spoke on it the other day. This is something that is reckoning, why this power and control, satanic, loves it and wants to shut people up. When they want to shut people up, Joe, you hit the nail on the head. Okay? I mean, this is America. They came back without limbs for all of our mouths. Mine saying Jesus, yours, and everyone's mouth. Not just, okay, whose mouth did you come back for, freedom? Well, I want to define it. It came back for all of our mouths, and it is a Judeo-Christian nation. You cannot take that fact away, Joe, that they're trying to. Hillary Clinton, what did she want to change the calendar 5 years ago? Somebody called me. I mean, how crazy is it that they're so evil and corrupt? But that's what we're up against. So, this is now the biblical prophecies. The soul is at stake, and define and say what the rest of the Bible says. Now, Joe, I found tapes of my former minister. Lee, you said they called you crazy, huh, Lee? Okay, I've been called everything, Lee. Thank God I found them, Joe. That's all. I mean, that was a miracle. A Bible scholar heard him. He said, play him for everybody.
Right.
Okay, in other words, let them hear what they're up against, but they're going to hate you.
All right.
Because you've been faithful.
Gene, I got to tell you, you're going to enjoy hour 2. The lines will be open and available. John Fia, he will be joining us through the phone, and Reverend Peter Preble in the studio in just a few minutes. I'm going to let you go right now because we've got to start rolling into hour 2. We're going to break for the news and some things. So, Gene, keep the radio on, go get a cup of coffee, and enjoy hour 2. All right, folks.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
I just assumed it. All right, I figured that'd be the case. All right, Gene. Happy Sunday morning to you. We'll talk to you in a little bit. All right, folks. 508-871-7000 is the number to reach into the studio. You can also text us on our text line, and it's real simple. Text it like you would anything else. 617-297-8388. You can also shoot an email to textjoeontheradio@gmail.com. We thought we'd keep that very simple for you, right? Textjoeontheradio@gmail.com. And that will also appear on the same screen. So, again, coming up in hour two is Reverend Peter Preble. He's already in the station, so he'll be behind the microphone. And Professor John Fia will also be joining us from the Messiah College. So that's happening hour two with the big announcement. Now, before I wrap up this hour, obviously, we needed to talk about the Americans killed in Afghan because it's a very sad thing. But military personnel were fired on. They were conducting an operation in Afghan's eastern Nagara province. The military said this yesterday, and there were U.S. casualties. Several U.S. personnel were either injured or killed. The exact number, maybe some on the news, it might be updated this morning, and other details that weren't provided late yesterday. But this is just another reason why, and like the president said, we need to get out of there. I mean, what are we doing? These are 1,000-year-old issues going on, and one of the reasons that it makes it possible for us to get out of there is we are energy independent. I mean, let's face it. Why have we been wrapped up in generations and century-old issues if it wasn't for oil? But my heart, my prayers go out to the family of those civilians and military personnel that lost their lives. It's a horrible, horrible thing. All right, that's going to wrap up hour one of the Sunday edition here on the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Stay tuned for hour two. Like I said, great topic, religion in America. What's its role? And great announcement to make. I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester.
American troops killed. Thai soldier kills. I'm Christopher Cruz. 2 American soldiers have died, 6 have been wounded by a man dressed in an Afghan army uniform. The attack happened late yesterday. The gunman himself was killed. Correspondent Jennifer Glass in the Afghan capital, Kabul, this morning says the region where the attack happened is one of the country's most dangerous.
There was a big push against ISIS fighters late last autumn, where hundreds were captured or killed, and they were considered to be quite disabled. But it's a very, very difficult province. It's mountainous. It borders Pakistan, and you have both the Taliban and ISIS operating there.
This is just the latest in the many attacks by Afghan National Army soldiers on their allied partners over 18 years of America's war in Afghanistan. Thailand's Prime Minister says 27 people have been killed, including the man who shot them in the bloodiest shooting attack in the country's long history. 57 people were wounded during the 16-hour-long rampage that began yesterday afternoon and ended this morning. Eyewitness John Fielding.
Everything was just completely normal, and then all of a sudden, everyone started running, lots of shouting and panicking. The immediate reaction was to kind of duck down and hide, and then everyone was running into the shops and restaurants, barricading the doors.
Police say a soldier angry over a financial dispute carried out the attack. He was killed this morning in a busy shopping mall where he had holed up overnight. 428 Americans are among the 3,000 passengers on board the Diamond Princess cruise ship that's been ordered to remain off the coast of Japan rather than dock. That's because 70 passengers on the ship are showing symptoms of the coronavirus. The death toll in China from the virus now 800.
Don't touch this.
Choice of a lawyer is an important decision. It should not be based solely on advertising. Sponsored by Case Legal Media. Attention, this is an important message for anyone that has been diagnosed with cancer after being exposed to Roundup or other weed killers. The Internal Agency for Research on Cancer warned that overexposure to Roundup and
increase the risk of developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Monsanto, the manufacturer of Roundup, may have known that Roundup and other weed killers were likely linked to organ damage and cancer. This information was hidden from the public as proprietary trade secret since 1981, and Monsanto may have failed to warn of the potential risk of cancer. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with cancer after being exposed to Roundup or other weed killers, you may be entitled to significant compensation. Call us now at 800-716-0457. Our network of attorneys are ready to fight for you. You'll pay nothing unless there's a recovery in your favor. Call now for a free consultation at 800-716-0457. You must protect your legal rights. Call 800-716-0457. Again, 800-716-0457.
7 o'clock. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Lavash, you're all set with your mortgage. And I assume you understand what you just signed.
The stack of papers, George?
That's right. And for future, just call this number if you need anything. And, I'm gonna need that pen back.
The mortgage process can be confusing. Looking for the right rate, the right term, and most importantly, the right place to get your mortgage. At Clinton Savings Bank, we are committed to getting the mortgage that's right for you. You may even receive up to a $750 credit off your closing costs. Plus, right now, you can lock in the rate from your pre-qualification for 90 days while you look for a home. So what are you waiting for? Definitely not this.
Oh boy. Hi, Mrs. Lavash. How can I help? You're breaking up. Try again later.
Subject to credit approval. Offer may be withdrawn at any time. For complete details, exclusions, and credit costs and terms, call 888-744-4272. Apply at ClintonSavings.com. NMLS number 422081. Member FDIC. Member DIF. Equal housing lender.
I want to tell you what Cantiani Insurance has been able to do for me and Teddy. We stopped in to see Paul Sr. and the great staff at 318 Plantation Street. They've been handling my car and business insurance for years. Teddy was making his way around the office, and they let me know. They now offer pet insurance. For a fraction of what one visit to the vet was for Teddy, they could cover him for a whole year. I know you treat your furry family members like any other family member, and as well as I do Teddy. The professional staff at Cantiani's has been providing courteous service for over 40 years, with integrity and personalized service, making sure that your insurance actually protects you and your family. With 2 locations, the 318 Plantation Street in Worcester and East Douglas Insurance Agency, located at 306 Main Street in Douglas. For home, auto, business insurance, and now pet insurance, click CantianiAgency.com or call 508-791-2088. 508-791-2088.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Our topics are large and small. When you really need to know, we are the show. You want to know, it's time to talk to you.
All right, folks, welcome back to Hour 2 of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Sunday edition, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation as we broadcast from our palatial but not overly ostentatious studios here in Westboro, Massachusetts. We also have our text line at 617-297-8388. Text us like you would anybody else. Real simple to do, but if you don't have the ability to text, but you do have a device, if you just email textjoeintheradio@gmail.com, it will be the same thing. It comes up on the same screen, so no problem. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Now, in studio with me is a very special guest, and like I had said earlier and yesterday, I've been wanting to do this segment for a while, and basically religion in America today, religion and its role in politics in United States landscape here, the political landscape. And I think that happenstance, we had Senator Romney, Mitt Romney, kind of lean on his religion just a few days ago and justifying his vote and so forth. And remember, I mean, we're exposed to Romney. He was our governor at one point, right? And he didn't usually do that. So that was a little stepping out. He downplayed his religion a lot because a lot of people, I don't think, totally understand the Mormon religion. And like I said earlier, if you don't have the privilege of having a friend who is of the Mormon faith and could have answered your questions and explained their faith to you, it's kind of mysterious to some people. So he always kind of stayed away from it. But let me invite into the conversation right now. In studio with me is Father Peter Preble. Good morning, Father. Reverend, sorry.
That's quite all right. Good morning. How are you?
It's the caller messed me up, man.
That messes a lot of people up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, can I get one of those? Because I think if I drove in the carpool lane, would I get stopped? Because I could just say, God's my passenger.
I'm not going to say it works because I haven't tried it.
Right. But again, thank you. Thank you for coming in this morning. I finally get to meet your lovely wife. And I know you were out at a party last night.
We were.
Yeah, how was
we
that?
were.
Did you get home in time?
We did.
A good night's sleep, okay.
We did, yeah.
So I had asked you, and we've known each other a long time, and Reverend Preble was on a former station that I've run before, has done radio before, so he has basically described what it is that you do right now, because I think of you as a traveling chaplain type of thing, right?
Right. So I do a lot of things. So I'm primarily a hospice chaplain of VNA of Boston, and along with that, I also am the what we call an interim minister at the First Congregational Church in Salem, New Hampshire. So I travel a bit from Weymouth to Salem. But so I do those two things primarily, and then thrown in on top of that, there's some chaplaincy work. I'm fire chaplain in the city of Quincy, and I'm also national chaplain for the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War.
Whoa. Okay.
So I'm busy.
Yeah, you certainly are busy. And I'd asked you, I'd reached out to Reverend Preble and said, hey, would you like to come sit in? Because I've wanted to do this topic, Reverend, is religion in America. And you know, in the last few years, there's been a lot of friction around because we've got the Muslim faith growing in this country. We've got issues in schools where prayer's not allowed, but then, prayer rugs are allowed or time has to be allocated. The president addressed in the State of the Union about allowing the freedom to pray in school, setting that aside, and that can't be touched, that kind of thing. So I think it's a great topic for us to talk about because we shouldn't ignore it. You know, this is a country that was founded on Judeo-Christianity. It is God we trust is on our money. I think that, not to mention the fact that this land was Puritans, you know, running away in the Mayflower for religious freedom. So obviously religion has a very strong streak through this country.
Sure.
What's your take on where it's going? Just the overview, because we got to get into something else,
right,
and then get into it with the
Well, I'll start with just one minor tweak or correction to what you said. Prayer is still allowed in school. You can still pray in school. Mm-hmm. It just can't be led by a teacher or an administrator, because, as you know, in public schools especially. Well, yeah, in a sense, but public schools, you know, the administrators and the teachers they work for the government, right? So the Constitution allows, or the separation of church and state, the Establishment Clause, whatever you want to call it, does not allow the government to say this is the religion, right? So students are still allowed to pray. Mm-hmm. They can pray whenever they want. I always say we take God with us wherever we go because God's in us, right? So we take God wherever we go.
That's what I've always said. See, I've always said, to me, you don't have to, and not that they're beautiful. I mean, churches are beautiful. Right. I mean, this is where, over the centuries, right, this is where the top craftsmen, the masons, the carpenters, glass workers built these beautiful cathedrals, and they were supposed to be these monuments to God. And I get that. That's wonderful. However, I've always maintained, do I need to go there to talk to God? Because I talk to God all the time.
Right.
And whether I'm washing dishes or walking the dog, to me, I feel, I don't need to make an appointment.
You're teeing me up perfectly.
Okay, good.
This is great.
Right. So I had promised that we were going to have a big announcement to make in this hour of the show. And I guess we just ripped the Band-Aid off.
Let's do it.
So starting in March, on Sunday mornings from 6 to 7 o'clock, Cameo Media is going to present another show for the roster here. and it will be hosted by Father Peter Preble, and it will be called Faith in America. And it will air Sunday mornings from 6 to 7 o'clock, and you'll be leading the discussion in that. So congratulations.
Thank you. It's at least for the moment, it's not going to be a live show.
Right.
I had a hard enough time getting here for 7.
Well, but that's okay. I think that it's one of these things that it's okay, because when you do a show like this and pre-record, and I have done it with my show, and it's hard sometimes to get people, especially on the West Coast, to join me at 6 or 7 Eastern Standard Time, that it gives you the flexibility to get great guests anytime during the week and just play it back.
Right.
And so that's fine.
Right.
I'm not worried about us doing it as a recorded show.
Sure.
But I think that it's a great time, because it's kind of a tee people up for service on Sunday.
Right. It's the discussion's going to be, I'm framing it as the discussion at the crossroads or the intersection of faith and society.
Perfect.
So we're going to bring it all in. I mean, we're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk, some of the things you were mentioning, politicians who use their faith when it's, convenient, and then when it's not, and things like that. And I think we're seeing, in this election cycle anyways, religion's becoming more and more of a player on both sides.
I agree. I agree on that. And the name is Reverend Preble's idea, and I love it, because I think it can be read two ways: faith in America and faith in America.
Right.
So the faith that we have in America, and just our religion in America. So I think it's a perfect name, especially for the goal of the show and the content of the show. What else can you tell us about the show before we move on to our today's discussion?
So I think it's going to be mostly an interview format with guests that will come on, authors, people who are sort of making news in the religious kind of realm of things. And we're going to have some fun too. So there's going to be some fun guests that come on. It's definitely going to be
decided. You gonna make religion fun?
Let's try. I mean, I think it should be, right?
I think it should be too, right? I mean,
right.
I'm Roman Catholic, so when I was a kid, we were very somber, right?
Right,
you
right.
Go to it's stand and kneel and sit and stand and kneel.
Right.
I never got the pattern right, but you do that, and then I've gone with friends to other churches,
Sure.
and I've gone to services and people sing and they dance, and or you have a particularly funny reverend or minister, which always helps
Sure.
the service go along.
Sure.
It's. I think that, are you going to cover everything too? I mean, are you going to have guests on from different faiths and different?
I think so, because we're pluralistic here. So I think we need to not just focus on one particular faith group or one particular denomination, even, but let's cover the gamut. I mean, even non-Christian religions as well. So I think the door's open, I think, is what we're going to do.
All right. Well, let's shift gears here. So the big announcement. So starting in March, every Sunday morning, 6 to 7, Cameo Media presents Faith in America with Reverend Peter Preble. But today's discussion, I wanted to talk about religion in America. I mean, so this is really a great launching point for it all. And when I reached out to you, Reverend, you suggested that I speak with John Fia of the Messiah College. And he graciously accepted, and I actually think there was a little bit of excitement, actually. He was all up for it. So let me invite into the conversation Father Fia. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on, Joe. Good to talk to you, too, Peter.
It's great to hear from you, too, John. Thanks.
So you guys have known each other a long time, or what's the background there?
I only know John from Twitter and Facebook.
Okay.
We've never actually met.
Right,
I've
okay.
read a couple of his books, and a big fan. So I'm kind of excited, like I got the fan crush going right now.
So
Too,
isn't that awesome?
I listen to his podcast, too. He's got a great podcast.
Okay.
I listen to that, too.
All right, so
I hope we have a good discussion, because you guys got me up early.
Yes, we did. What state are you in? What time zone?
I'm in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay. All right, but it's still early on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So let's just fill our listeners a little bit here. You're a professor of American history at Messiah College. You are an author. How many books? Is it 2 or 1?
I have 6 books.
6. Oh, well.
Yep.
Excuse me. All right. Six books.
Yeah.
And these are okay. Actually, I'm pulling this up. Was America found? Okay, so the Bible, cause, a history, why, study history, reflection, believe in. Okay, so these are on. What I've done, folks, is you have a web page, Father, right? thewayofImprovement.com.
Right.
All right. So we will post that and send people to that. And what do you currently?
You could just call me John too. I'm
John.
not a father. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Professor, actually, but not father. Okay.
That's fine.
My mistake. All right. So, all right, Professor John. Then, so tell people in your own word a little bit what you're doing right now, and how do you view religion in America today?
Sure. Again, I teach at a Christian college. So this is a college that might be a sister school out in your area to a school like Gordon College, or some kind of self-identified Christian college. So I teach American history, and a lot of what I do and a lot of what I write about is thinking about religion in America today, and then also thinking about how we got to the place where we are today with the role of religion in America as a historian. So I'm an American religious historian. So I think it was the author John Meacham, who writes these magnificent books about the founding fathers, who said, and this is echoing something Peter said as well, for someone who studies American history and religion in this particular moment, every day is Christmas, because there's always something that seems to be going on in our culture related to these two things.
John, I wanted to ask you this because in all these years of doing talk radio, the term separation of church and state, we hear it regurgitated over and over again. And my understanding is that really meant that there wasn't going to be an official religion of the government, that you were free to practice whatever religion you wanted in whatever way you wanted, and that the government was not going to interfere with that. They couldn't tell you have to, or that you couldn't. And that's what I took and take as separation of church and state. But it seems to have kind of taken on a different life in that it's like the third rail, that if anybody in government or now we've got people say, well, you can't put a nativity scene up on a common, that kind of thing, because of separation of church and state. As a history professor, a historian, what is that? What does that mean, separation of church and state? And what were the founding fathers thinking? How did they view religion in America then?
Sure. Well, it's interesting. You're in New England. The separation of church and state was actually a phrase similar. It was coined originally by Roger Williams, one of the founders of Rhode Island. And the idea was to, exactly as you put it, to protect the church, to protect the purity of the church from government interference or outside interference, right? So you have it exactly right historically. And that's the way the founding fathers probably did understand it. They would probably not have recognized the way we think about the separation of church and state today. So for example, you had someone like Thomas Jefferson when he was president. He would attend religious services, Christian services, in the House of Representatives. They would actually hold them in the chamber. So the idea that somehow religion was not permitted is not necessarily the way that the founders would have framed it. A lot of that changed after World War II, when the Supreme Court passed the famous Everson versus Board of Education New Jersey case, and that's where you get this language of, for the first time, that there is a wall of separation and it's high and impregnable. Right? This was Justice Hugo Black. So I think the best way to think about this wall of separation is, yes, church and state are separate. Maybe there is some kind of a wall separating the two, but that wall has many checkpoints where religion kind of passes in. And we saw this with the impeachment trial, right? I don't know if you watch the Reverend Barry Black every day, who stood up. We have Peter here, who's a chaplain too, right? Who stood up and prayed, right? So, that there's some huge wall that's inseparable does not seem to reflect the founding position, at least on that.
I agree. In the sense that I always understood it as it was put in there to protect churches from government intervening or telling them that they can't exist or that you can't worship. But yet we see prayer at the beginning of so many government functions, and we have chaplains that serve. Whether it's the State of the Union or the state of the state, it happens. I remember when it was, I think, Bill Weld. Remember, was it Weld or Romney? I think it might have been Romney. But when they, after the inauguration speech, everybody did the sign of the cross, and it was this huge thing for a couple of days, right? People were so appalled at this, and I'm thinking, why? It doesn't hurt you, right? It doesn't. Right. Why should it matter to you if someone is exercising their faith and showing it? If you happen to be of a different faith or none at all,
right?
How does that possibly hurt you?
We do have an disestablishment clause too. I mean, it's important. This is much more nuanced and complicated, right? The government also cannot endorse a particular religion in any way too. So you always have to balance that, right? I mean, the idea that the government, it's one thing to cross itself or to say a prayer, it's another when the government decides that they are going to endorse one particular form of religion or another. As Reverend Preble said earlier, we live in a pluralistic society, so that always needs to be balanced as well with that historical way the founders understood it.
So in my work in chaplaincy, in military chaplaincy, fire chaplaincy, the various chaplaincies that I do, although I come from a decidedly Christian position, I have to be the chaplain for all. So when I pray in public, and sometimes people have a hard time with this, I don't pray in Jesus' name at the end of the prayer, right? I pray in your name, or, and we use sort of that overarching God term, because that brings, almost everybody in.
Right.
And yes, there's still some people that would be left out, but the vast majority, and I think everybody sort of understands that. And so that's the position that I have to come from, that position as a chaplain, because I can't just be chaplain for the Christian folk. Now, I also can't be required by whatever entity I'm working for to do something that goes against my belief. So I have to be able to freely exercise my faith. It's Title 10 in the U.S. Code, that I can freely exercise my faith in whatever role I'm in. But at the same time, there needs to be that stop at some point where I'm the chaplain for everybody in the unit, everybody in the fire department, everybody in hospice.
Right. Let me put this out to the both of you gentlemen. I know this is a sweeping question, but let's see where you guys stand. How do you view the religion when it comes to politics today, and our politicians who use religion as part of their overall character, painting the picture of themselves, and going? We've seen the president get a lot of criticism and saying that he's not really a Christian, or not really, a devout man. We also had Barack Obama take a lot of fire for really being people saying he was really a Muslim and he wasn't a Christian. He even, in the interview with Stephanopoulos, literally said, "My Muslim faith," and Stephanopoulos had to correct him and say, "You mean Christian faith, right?" So there was a lot of question about that. People said, "Oh, well, what's your take on politicians and how they use religion today?" Who would like to go first? Reverend?
Well, I think what we're seeing in this election cycle. No, let me just back up. Okay. I think religion's been used by politicians forever.
Oh,
going back to year zero, right?
Yeah,
the beginning of time. I think religion's been used. I think religion has used politicians at the same time. The first thing, I think we need to have an understanding of there's a difference between politics and partisan politics. All right? From my standpoint as a Christian, Jesus Christ in the Gospels was very political. Everything he talked about, right? Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, love your neighbor. Those are all very political things, but they're not partisan. And I think where we get in trouble, and I think where the Johnson Amendment that supposedly doesn't exist anymore, although it does, comes into play, is when we get into that partisan angle, or if we start talking about particular candidates, right? So I think we get into those problems. I think what's kind of refreshing in this cycle is that, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is that politicians on both sides of the aisle are starting to address faith matters, faith people who have a faith, right? It seemed to me in the last cycle, and I think Democrats as a whole tend to shy away from religious people. There's something like maybe we're radioactive or something. I don't know, that they can't be as open, I guess, if they're sidling up to sort of religious people. But now all the major campaigns have directors of faith initiatives. They have Elizabeth Warren announced recently. She's got this group now, this committee of different faith people. And so I think, Republicans, conservatives have sort of always had this kind of relationship with religious people, right? And it's helped them a lot. And I think now we're starting to see that from the Democrat side. I don't like the sort of fading in and out that we'll use faith when it's necessary, and then we're not going to use it over here. But I think if faith informs our decisions, then I think that's an important part of it.
And we saw Romney specifically make reference to God and his faith, why he voted the way he did. Nancy Pelosi is constantly saying, I pray for you. Now, how earnest is she in that? And again, we see politicians kind of use faith and or, they get a little sanctimonious sometimes when it works for them. And then other times their faith can't be found anywhere in their actions or their discussion. So when we come back, we got to take a break here, John and Reverend. So when we take the break, what is it, 7th? Oh, so we're going to actually listen to the LPDAM case files of the LPDAM, 7:30 on Sundays. And then we will come back on the other side, and we'll continue, and we'll let John pick it up and let us you give us your take on it, because we had the prayer breakfast the other day,
right,
and that's interesting. So I'd like to get your take on that as well.
Yeah, sure.
And then of course, Nancy Pelosi has come under a lot of fire for invoking that, that religion from time to time. And she lectured us, too, about the other day that she didn't. The reporter asked her about and if you remember during the State of the Union, she kind of gave that mother cowing look to somebody. I don't know who she was. She was like saying, "Behave yourself or else," right? But you got her behind the president. You saw her literally put her finger up and shoot a look. Right, that would have stopped any of us if our mother gave us in our tracks. And so she was telling somebody to behave and have quorum. And then the reporter asked, we saw that. Were you doing that? And she said, yeah, I was. And they said, well, ripping that up, didn't that kind of, undo all of that? So she actually then said to the reporter, and I don't need a lecture from anybody. And she gestured toward the reporter about dignity, much less the president. So interesting. But are we ready for that break, Cam? All right, so we're going to take a quick break here, 31 minutes after the hour. This is Joe Mangiacotti Show, and I'm talking to Reverend Peter Preble and John Fair. And the discussion is religion in America today. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Good morning and welcome to Case Files from the LPDAM, where we take a look at lessons from actual cases, the law behind the findings, and where we share the experience of experts of the Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts. Joining us this week is Sean Burke, current president of LPDAM and resident manager of Courtside Investigations. Good morning, Sean. Let's talk about the association in itself. When was this actually created, and what was the purpose of putting together a Private Detectives Association?
As with most...
You have the right one? Good morning and welcome to Case Files from the LPDAM, where we take a look at the lessons from actual cases, the law behind the findings, and where we share the experiences of the experts of the Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts. Joining us this week is Sean Burke, president of LPDAM and resident manager of Courtside Investigations. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Joe.
Great to have you back here on Case Files from the LPDAM. Let's get into it, because I was thinking that we should tackle some of those mysterious terms and procedures that exist out there. And I thought today I'd ask you about probate, right? People hear that term, but I'm not sure everybody understands what it means when you are in probate court. Could you shed some light on that?
Well, Joe, I appreciate being a resource to your listeners. Thank you for having me in today. Anytime you talk about probate court cases, you need to think about relationships, how they develop, how they're maintained, and ultimately how you close one out. A relationship is like a contract, Joe, a contract in life that is constantly changing. Oftentimes, we don't have control in our relationships, which can contradict all other facets in our lives. With that said, Joe, if your listeners find themselves in a probate court proceeding, such as a divorce, a custody matter, or an estate issue, then they should consider hiring an LPDM associated business to get supporting facts and provide closure to a potentially messy situation in life. To be an LPDM member business, it is required that the member holds a private investigator license. Why is this important? There is no point in acquiring information that you can't use in a Massachusetts court. An LPDM member investigator has the experience and the know-how to testify in court effectively to help you win your case. You can find a member investigator by going to lpdam.org and hit the Find Investigator tab. Information is empowering, Joe, and these services will allow your listeners to make more informed decisions. In the end, it's a cost savings. Joe, at LPDAM, our approved associated members don't have all the answers. They actually get the answers.
Wow, Sean, thank you. That's a lot to digest right now. Let me ask you this. Could you give an example of maybe a case or a situation you dealt with that had to do with probate court?
Absolutely, Joe. One of the main issues in probate court is when one party throws spaghetti against the wall.
The old see what sticks, huh?
Absolutely. Let me tell you about one probate case that comes to mind, Joe. My client was arrested at her daughter's school, of all places, for an OUI. This happens in the middle of a divorce, so the father saw it as an opportunity to acquire temporary physical custody of their daughter. My client couldn't explain to the judge why she was arrested for an OUI because she claimed she wasn't drinking or under any medication that would impair her ability to drive. My client hired us to get the facts, so she could at least get answers or at least an explanation to an absolute nightmare. We obtained the video from the school. She drove in with no issue, parked perfectly, Joe, and walked into the school with her child with no apparent issue. The video showed us the school's front desk, and her body language actually changed, and clearly something was wrong. She walked out the front door and sat on a bench. Another parent observed her being upset and incoherent. The school called the police to assist. The police had difficulty communicating with her, and being unsure of what the issue was, they gave her a breathalyzer, and she blew a 00. The police decided to arrest her because she was unsteady on her feet, and they could not communicate properly with her, and they did not want her to drive a car. The amazing thing here, Joe, is that it took my client over a year to get custody rights back. Only after an investigation that discovered that she had a medical condition that she was not aware of, and at the front desk it was believed that she had an actual seizure, which was part of that medical condition. Unfortunately for her, that was hard to overcome at the probate court. The reason for that is the father claimed that she was unfit because she had put her child in danger by going to the school, and he really didn't care if it was a medical condition. He was aware of her medical past, which is again unfortunate. So he made many allegations needed to be overcome before the court could actually see what the truth was. In this case, Joe, she could have easily lost her child due to a medical condition, which is unfair but a reality in the probate court. By having a private investigator, I think it is smart to try to hire somebody early in a case versus trying to catch up in that case.
Early intervention in a case like this would make all the difference in the world, Sean.
Yes, it would, Joe.
Excellent. That will wrap it up for this week's edition of Case Files from the LPDAM. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to your listeners.
And thank you for joining us for Case Files from the LPDAM. Join us each week here on WCRN 830 AM and online anytime at lpdamcasefiles.com. And visit us at lpdam.org. And you can find LPDAM on Facebook and Twitter at PINMass and anytime at 800-955-6274. For Sean, I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to Joe.
All right, folks, welcome back to the final segment of the Joe Mangiacotti Show in the Sunday edition here. Great to have the case files from the LPDAM every Sunday at 7:30. Great information coming from there. Glad to have them aboard. Don't forget to go to lpdam.org. And you can go to lpdmcasefiles.com to listen to all of those vignettes that we'll be putting together week after week. And it's just, I got to tell you, I've been talking to a lot of the investigators. Great stories coming up. There's some stuff that we can't actually probably put on the air to some of these stories, but it's great stuff coming up on that. All right, in studio with me is Reverend Peter Preble, who will be hosting Cameo Media production of Faith in America beginning in March. So Sunday mornings, 6 to 7 o'clock, we'll be doing pretty much a religion show. And again, to tell people you're going to bring that crossroads of politics and faith, and what is that, and where we are with that.
Sure.
Also with us is John Fay, who is a professor of history. And before the break, John, I was asking the two of you, give us your take today of how religion is working with politicians today, and how do you view it? And then let's go from there on how we're going to fix everything.
We're
going to solve all the problems of the world right here.
I'm glad he tossed that one to you and not me.
I think everybody in some way brings their faith to bear on public life, on political life. It's just natural, and to tell somebody that they cannot bring their faith or shouldn't bring their faith into public life is kind of a disjunction. It's like leaving part of yourself to the side whenever you engage in kind of politics or public life. From the perspective of faith, I think the great danger of bringing faith to public life, and a caution, I would say, is that rather than having your faith speak to particular issues in culture, oftentimes faith and conviction, especially Christianity, which is the religion I know best, certain things about what God calls Christians to do or what the Bible teaches or what the church teaches can often easily get co-opted by politics. And you see this both in terms of the Democratic and Republican Party. There's a danger that we allow Christians, I should say, allow the politics to drive their faith rather than perhaps the other way around. So oftentimes we'll see Christians kind of embracing the beliefs of one political party, when the way I look at it is, Christian faith at least cuts across, has ideas that cut across political parties, and faith is not held captive by one political ideology. So I think that's what you often see on these matters, of when people think about the role of their faith in politics. There's always that great danger from the side of faith.
Well, let me ask you guys, first of all, let's talk about the president. John, how do you see, because we saw in him get an incredible boost, right, in support by, how do you say, evangelitis or
evangelical.
Evangelico.
You make it sound like it's a disease or something.
I don't want to catch evangelico. Yeah. So from the evangelists, I guess, I don't know the plural of that. Was that a surprise to get that support from him, that he got the support from that segment, or was it a given, or what was describe to me religion and how it played in the Trump candidacy and then in the Trump administration?
I just actually finished a whole book on this very subject, and it's really interesting how this happened. I think in some ways most Americans would have said that this was a surprise, right? A guy like Donald Trump does not necessarily always model the best kind of Christian values that traditionally evangelical or born again Christians embrace. So it is shocking, I think, to many that Donald Trump would have won these evangelicals over. At the same time, I think if you look at this historically, there's kind of a long history going all the way back since the 1970s and 1980s, with Jerry Falwell Sr. and the moral majority, and when Christians started getting involved in politics, they have been operating under a particular kind of playbook, political playbook, which privileges things like Supreme Court appointments, abortion, religious freedom as they understand it. So it shouldn't have surprised us, because Donald Trump understood that playbook too, and he was able to appeal to some, at least with numbers sometimes high as 81% of white American evangelical Christians. So if you look at this historically and you think about history, it shouldn't surprise us at all, but I think it is sometimes shocking to see these very devout evangelicals, singing the praises, sometimes, literally singing and rejoicing, if you will, in a man like Donald Trump, who has had a career in which he does not seem to have exemplified any interest up until this point in religious belief.
Wow. So now how does it work for him? I mean, you've got the candidates, right? You have candidates out there right now who are saying things like late-term abortion, same-day abortion. How is that playing into your religious? I mean, you got Pete Buttigieg, who says, yeah, you can abort up until the day. Governor Northstorm was talking about putting the baby being delivered and then having a conversation about whether or not they provide care for this child or they let it die. We've had Biden, right? Wasn't he denied communion, I think, in Carolina, North or South Carolina? So how do people of faith reconcile politicians who agree with late-term abortions, birthday abortions, and they want to tell you that they're very religious and Christian?
So I think the perspective needs to come from. So I'm not a single issue person, right? So,
nor am I.
Right. So I have to look at the whole picture.
Them, right?
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I have to look at the whole picture. But there are people who are, that's their issue, and that's the deciding factor for them. I've said all along that I think the staying power of the religious right has been they set their sights on a goal. The goal was judges, Supreme Court, and start to move in that direction. They bided their time. They got people elected in the right places, and they moved along, and they seized their opportunity with President Trump. They saw him as their candidate. The same people, by the way, who, when Bill Clinton was in office, character mattered. Now, all of a sudden, it seems that character doesn't matter, that locker room talk is just locker room talk, right? But with Bill Clinton, it was an impeachable offense, right? So things have changed. And when we talk about sort of the state of the state of faith in America, and the number of people who are abandoning churches, which is true. Let's not, that is the truth. There's less people in church today than there was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. But I think a lot of it has to do with the nature of hypocrisy, not only in religion, but sort of in society, right? So there was an article in BuzzFeed back at the end of January, Emma O'Connor, who's the new religion writer at BuzzFeed. Now, BuzzFeed is like the millennials thing, right? Yep. And they have somebody who's commenting now on religion. And she wrote a really interesting article, and if you have a chance, check it out. The title of it is Anti-Trump Evangelicals Are Trying to Figure Out What to Do Next. So it comes sort of from the evangelical standpoint we were just talking about. But she says towards the end of the article, she says, millennials are leaving the church, not going to church, because they look at Trump and his supporters and see them as hypocrites, see them as judgmental. As this chaos continues, it's expediting young people leaving the church. There's a lot of evangelicals who don't want that. One of the things that I've found in my almost 16 years in ministry is that the younger generation has a finely tuned BS meter, right? Mm-hmm. They can smoke you out if you're not true. They don't mind the struggle, the authentic struggle, the real struggle with your faith and questions about faith and how politics gets into all of that and abortion issues, all of these things. The struggle's real, and they don't mind the struggle being real. It's the people who come across all washed and scrubbed, and they seem to have everything together. they're the duck on the top of the water when underneath their feet are going like crazy. And that's what they don't like. So they don't want to sit in the same building with that. And so that's what's happening. So I think that I think religion or faith in America is great. I think it's just not people getting into the church building anymore. And I think that falls squarely on people like me, faith leaders, because we've done a horrible job talking about what we stand for.
Well, we're going to fix that in March.
I hope.
Right. And and let me roll this number, folks, because we'll take your calls. If you have a question for John or Reverend Preble, 508-871-7000. Lines are open and available, 508-871-7000, or the text line at 617-297-8388. I got to tell you, when you're talking about that and the hypocrisy, and things happen in your childhood, right, that stick with you and help form. And something that I remember now, 4 decades later, and it stuck with me. I'm the son of a police officer, and my father used to would say things, and what stuck with me is how he hated the hypocrisy that on a Saturday night he would get called to a domestic disturbance, and he'd respond, and he'd get there, and there is a fight, going on between a husband, literally physical fight. The door opens, he sees the wife bleeding from the lip, obviously, and this was before police could make an arrest. And in those days, John, you couldn't arrest unless they would press charges, not even with the wife or whoever the victim was. And then he said he would go to, direct traffic Sunday morning at church, and that same family, all dressed up, she's all made up, makeup covering everything, holding hands, crossing the street and going into church. And that stuck with me, of that hypocrisy, that what was going on behind closed doors. And then they walk into the church pretending that they're this perfect family. And I don't know why that stuck with me, but it obviously made me think, okay, so everything you see, and maybe that planted the seed for me then as a child, that don't believe everything that you see and how people present forward. So I don't know. Maybe that tells more than I should. I don't know. What, John?
We live in a broken world where these things happen, right? I mean, I don't know. It's one thing to go to church and pretend that you're all dressed up and that everything's fine. But I would probably say those people need to be in church more than anyone else.
Yeah.
So
Amen.
It depends how you look at it. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What is when politicians use their faith or their relationship or agreement? This is the other thing we hear. My God told me, right? My right. You rolled your eyes. God told my pact with God, my understanding with God is that I do this. And does that make you feel good, or does it cringe you a little bit?
So here's my thing. All right, as someone who's a Christian, and I say this to people who claim to be Christian. If your God's speaking to you and telling you anything other than
let me know,
love your neighbor,
yeah,
love your enemy, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the sick and those in prison, which is what Jesus was the hallmark of the gospel, central to the gospel message. If your God's telling you to do anything different than that, you need to listen to someone else.
Okay.
Because it's not, in my understanding anyways, it's not the Christian God. It's not that Jesus Christ stuff.
John, do politicians use their relationship with God when it works for them?
Oh, absolutely. And they've been using this, they've been doing this since the beginning of the American Republic. You even look at the American Revolution, right? You had ministers using the Bible and religion to justify breaking away from England. And you had ministers, from other denominations like the Anglican Church, who was the Church of England, right, who were using the Bible to justify that the American Revolution was wrong, and that it was a violation. So you see this over and over and over again. Again, this goes back to my point, though. Something is probably wrong when you are allowing a particular political position to dictate your understanding of your faith rather than the other way around. I see faith and Christianity to be a very prophetic, if you will, religion. In other words, Christianity has a set of morals and values that should speak truth to power in all political parties. So I do cringe when I hear politicians using faith to justify a political agenda in that sense. So you had at the prayer breakfast the other day, you had, Donald Trump stands up there after he hears a short sermon on loving your neighbors and getting contempt out of your heart. And then he stands up there and says, I disagree with that. Well, you're essentially disagreeing with the words of Jesus. That's what Jesus said. And then he goes to attack Mitt Romney and Nancy Pelosi for using their faith. So we could debate whether Romney or Pelosi are using their faith for political purposes. We can debate whether Donald Trump is doing that. I think in some respects they probably all are. But I just found Trump's actions at that prayer breakfast to be, as a person of faith and a historian, to be pretty standard. We've done, politicians have done that a long time, but as a Christian, I also found it to be incredibly reprehensible.
Awesome. 508-871-7000. John and Reverend, care to take a phone call?
Sure.
All right. Let's go to the phones. Jean, who is actually known to us, as affectionately the God Lady. Jean, you're on with Reverend Preble and John Fay. So go ahead. You got a minute here to ask him a question or state your opinion.
Well, first of all, I would like to say, can you have it open? Yes, in other words, could you have it so that callers could call in? And also, let me just tell you something. You guys, thank you for doing this. And thank you that you're realizing what's happening in this world today, how they're using Jesus and using faith. There is only one plan of salvation, the blood of Jesus Christ. We need to repent because that's the first thing he said. We need to do and follow Jesus because Jesus said, follow me. Follow the master, not the pastor. That's how I came up with that.
I like that.
Can I borrow that, Gene?
Yeah, right. I want to borrow that, too. I love
it. Me. A few people do. Praise Jesus, miracles. But I thank you for wanting to get the real gospel out there because it's desperately needed. Souls are at stake. They can kill me, Father. They can kill me, the other pastor, Reverend. Okay? Lay down your life for the gospel. We were taught that. I have everything on tape, by the way, if you want to hear them. So I shouldn't say everything, but the ones I found are imperative to my faith. You cannot change what the Bible says, and that's what they want to do today. For money, yuppies, and numbers. The end times, what does it say, Father, Reverend? They will want to tickle your ears. They will depart from truth and sound doctrine. They will accumulate for themselves men in accordance with their own lusts and desires. And I want to give you hope. I was the biggest pig there ever was. There's nobody that can't be saved.
Well, do you know what? Jean was saved. John and Reverend, she was saved. Jean, I hope you're excited about Faith in America, which will air Sunday mornings from 6 until 7 o'clock, and that will be Reverend Peter Preble, who will be steering that ship for us. 508-871-7000. Good morning, Joanne. Thank you for calling in. You're on with John Fay and Reverend Peter Preble.
Yes, good morning. I've heard both of your guests take cracks at President Trump, so, a little bit of hypocrisy here, but I know I only have a split second, so I wanted to get that in. BuzzFeed, of course, was the group that put out the false Steele dossier, and so you'll get a little bit of push out, Reverend and John or whatever, if you're going to be taking cracks at President Trump using your religion.
John.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
well,
could you
I will.
And you were shocked at the prayer breakfast? What about shocked at Nancy Pelosi using her religion, saying she's prayerful, and then the woman is vicious liar? That doesn't shock you, but something President Trump said at the press. But anyway.
No,
go ahead.
Joanne, you relax. You're making a good point, and John's going to respond.
Okay.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Here's my position on this. Again, speaking as a Christian now, more as a Christian than as necessarily an American historian. I think when we hold politicians accountable, we need to hold them accountable based upon the whole breadth of what the scriptures teach. Reverend Preble was talking about this as well, right? We need to hold Nancy Pelosi accountable. We need to hold Donald Trump accountable. We need to hold everybody accountable by what the scriptures teach.
Yeah, well, okay, that's great. Those words are great, just as long as you do hold the left accountable too. But if it's going to be a program where you take shots at President Trump, expect a little bit of pushback because I think President Trump is a little more sincere than Nancy Pelosi in her prayerfulness.
Hey, Joanne,
Joanne,
I just want to make the distinction that the show that's coming up starting in March that Reverend Preble is going to be hosting is that's a Faith in America show. But right now, the topic of today's discussion is politics in America today and politics. How does it play with the politicians? So that's what it is.
Is that what I was speaking to?
Well, yeah, but you said if the show is going to be, I don't think that Reverend Preble is going to come in to take pot shots at the president every week. That's not going to be what the show is about.
Or extol the virtues of BuzzFeed, because Joe, I think you know what BuzzFeed is, and probably think of it as I do, correct? I don't know.
Well, BuzzFeed to you is what Fox News is to me. Sorry, but that's just what it is. We all get our news in different places. So I've sat here and listened to you. Well, all right, I'll just stop.
The veneer is dropped. So the veneer is dropped. You're not really religious. You're using your religion to promote your leftist Democrat vision. So we can expect to hear a lot of pro Warren and Bernie Sanders. Yeah.
Well, you have your opinion and I have mine, and I don't, feel right about personal attacks on my faith. You don't know me. You haven't read anything I've written. You don't come to my church. You probably never will. But you have your belief. I have mine. It works for me. I'm not saying it has to work for you. Just don't make it personal. That's all.
All right. Unfortunately, we've run out on the clock. John, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry, but we got caught. Reverend Preble, congratulations. We're looking forward to this in March. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. Have the great rest of the weekend, folks, and be back next Saturday morning, 6 a.m.
WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester, 8 o'clock.
Correspondent Jennifer Glass in the Afghan capital says someone dressed as an Afghan soldier attacked without warning yesterday.
The joint Afghan-U.S. force were on what the U.S. calls a two-leader engagement. They were just figuring that up when they say an individual in an Afghan uniform opened fire. As we said, 2 U.S. forces killed, 6 injured. Those 6 wounded are being treated at a U.S. facility.
The attacker was shot and killed. A New York City police officer is alive this morning after being shot in the chin and neck in what the police commissioner is calling an assassination attempt. A man walked up to 2 police officers sitting in a police van in the Bronx last night, started talking with them, then without warning pulled out a gun and began shooting. Police have a description of the man, but they haven't arrested him yet. 3,000 passengers remain in a 14-day quarantine aboard the Diamond Princess cruise ship off the coast of Japan this morning. Correspondent Matt Rivers in Yokohama says some of the 428 Americans on board want their government to come get them.
We know that some of them have called publicly for the U.S. State Department and even President Trump to get involved to get them off that ship before the quarantine period ends. However, the Japanese Defense Ministry said they've talked to their counterparts in the American government, and they're on board with the way the Japanese officials are handling this situation. They say the U.S. will not interfere.
Thailand's prime minister says 27 people have been killed in the bloodiest shooting attack in the country's history. A soldier angry over a financial dispute is being blamed for the attack, which happened yesterday. We now know the identity of the mother who was killed along with her 6 children in a house fire early yesterday morning in a suburb of Jackson, Mississippi. 33-year-old Brittany Presley was an elementary school